single mom works as a dancer to feed her baby, unaware. The mafia boss watches her every night. The bass was a dull, tired thud against Lena Hart's ribs. It was the heartbeat of the velvet pearl, a sound so familiar it had replaced the memory of quiet evenings. She moved across the small, scarred stage, her body tracing patterns under the weak pink and blue lights. The air, thick with synthetic fog, tasted of stale beer and the cheap cherry perfume sprayed to mask the smell of disinfectant. She was on autopilot. Left hip, right hip, spin. Her gaze was fixed just above the heads of the 24 men scattered in the dim light, their faces blurred into a single, hungry shadow. She'd learned long ago not to meet their eyes. It invited interest, and interest was complication. All Lena wanted was to be invisible while being stared at. From the VIP balcony, shielded by a pane of smoked glass in absolute shadow, Dante Vascari watched. He had been watching for 3 weeks. He sat perfectly still, a glass of amber liquid untouched on the table before him. The men at his table, his capos and associates, had long since learned not to speak to him when he got this way. His focus was absolute, unnerving. He was not watching Lena the way the other men were. Their eyes devoured, his observed. He watched the mechanics of her, the slight wince when she put weight on her left ankle, the practiced, brittle smile that never, not once, reached her eyes. He watched the way her hand instinctively drifted to the small, tarnished locket at her throat during the moments the music transitioned. He saw a professional exhaustion that mirrored his own. Though their worlds were universes apart, she was 24, but tonight she looked older. She finished the set, her chest rising and falling in the damp air, and offered a half-hearted bow. The applause was thin, punctuated by a low whistle from the bar. Lena turned and disappeared behind the worn velvet curtain, the smile dissolving from her face before the fabric even settled. In the dressing room, which smelled of sweat, baby powder, and rust, she leaned against the metal locker. The thud of the bass resumed. A new girl, a new routine. Lena closed her eyes, and the memory, the one she always pushed away, flooded in. It was the rain. It had been raining the day Jake left. The plastic stick on the cracked bathroom sink had shown 2 faint pink lines. She remembered the thrill, the terror, and then the hollow space that opened in her stomach when she showed him. He had laughed, not a cruel laugh, just an empty, surprised one. A kid? Nah, Lena, I'm not built for that. He'd kissed her forehead, a casual, dismissive gesture. That's your problem, babe. You'll figure it out. He was gone before the rent was due. She had figured it out. She figured it out by working double shifts at the greasy spoon diner until her belly was too round to fit between the tables. She figured it out by selling her mother's jewelry, piece by piece. She figured it out by enduring the 16 hours of labor alone in a sterile white room, clutching a nurse's hand and pretending it was someone who loved her. And then there was Rosie, 9 months old, a perfect, tiny, demanding miracle who smelled like milk and sleep. Rosie was the anchor. The reason, but anchors were heavy, and Lena was drowning. The diner jobs, the stocking shifts at the 24-hour convenience store, it was never enough. The math never worked. Rent, utilities, diapers, formula. The formula alone was a nightmare. So she'd answered the ad for the Velvet Pearl. Dancers wanted, no experience necessary, cash nightly. She'd walked home that first night with $300 in her bra, feeling both powerful and utterly destroyed. Now, she zipped her thin jacket, the chill of the October night already seeping into the concrete walls of the club. She hurried, her footsteps echoing. Home was 6 blocks away, 6 blocks of dark pavement and shadowed alleyways in Northmore City. Her apartment was small, 2 rooms above a corner store owned by Mr. Navarro. The building was old, the pipes groaned, and the scent of cardamom and old newspapers always lingered in the stairwell. But it was safe. Mr. Navarro made sure of it. He was locking the heavy metal grate over his store window when she arrived, the streetlights glinting off his white hair. "Ah, Lena," he smiled, his voice warm and accented. "A long night." They always are. Mr. Navarro, how is she? An angel, he said, handing her the folded, worn baby blanket. She slept after her bottle. Not a sound. He looked at her, his eyes kind but worried. You look tired, mija. This work, it's hard on the soul. It pays the bills, Lena said, forcing a smile. Thank you. Really, I don't know what I'd do. We are neighbors. Neighbors help. He patted her arm. Go, get some sleep. I will see you tomorrow. She climbed the narrow stairs, the key already in her hand. The apartment was cold. She went straight to the crib tucked into the alcove that served as a bedroom. Rosie was asleep on her back, her tiny mouth open, her small starfish hands curled by her face. Lena stood there for a long time, just breathing her in. The fear, the exhaustion, the ache in her feet, it all receded, replaced by a fierce, terrifying wave of love. She checked the lock on the door 3 times before she collapsed onto the mattress on the floor, asleep before the sirens in the distance faded. 2 blocks away, in an armored sedan that blended with the shadows, Rico Vescari turned to his boss. All right, Dante. We've been watching her walk home for 3 weeks. She's a civilian. She's clean. Rico was Dante's right hand, the only man alive who would dare use that tone. It's an obsession. It's not smart. The families, they look for weaknesses. A girl like this, a kid. Dante did not look at him. His gaze was fixed on the darkened window of the apartment above the corner store. The Vescari syndicate was built on discipline, on the absence of emotion, on the cold, hard logic of power. Dante was the embodiment of that. Yet, here he was, night after night, watching a dancer. She reminds me of someone, Dante said, his voice quiet. It was the only explanation he'd given, and Rico knew it was the only one he would get. The girl from the old neighborhood, Sophia? Rico pressed, his voice softer. Dante, that was a lifetime ago. This girl isn't her. I know who she is, Dante said flatly. She's vulnerable, and she's alone. So are a lot of people, Rico argued. You can't save all of them, and you definitely can't save one by watching her from a car. You're either in or you're out. Stepping into her life, that's a different kind of danger. For her. Dante's jaw tightened. He knew Rico was right, but he couldn't shake the image of her face when she'd stepped off the stage, the sheer, crushing weight he'd seen in her eyes. It was a look he hadn't seen since... Just drive, Dante ordered. The car pulled silently from the curb. The next day, the pounding came. It was just afternoon. Lena was heating a bottle. Rosie balanced on her hip. It wasn't Mr. Navarro's polite knock. It was a fist. Heavy, impatient, sloppy. Lena froze. Her blood turned to ice. She knew that knock. Lena, I know you're in there. Open this damn door. Jake. She gently placed a startled Rosie in the crib and moved to the door, her heart hammering. What do you want, Jake? What do I want? I want to see my kid. He slurred, rattling the knob. He smelled of cheap whiskey and desperation through the wood. She's not your kid. Jake, you made that clear. Go away. Come on, babe. Don't be like that. I just need some cash. I know you're working that new joint, the Velvet Pearl. Classy. He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. You're dancing for strangers. You can spare something for me. I don't have any money for you. Liar. The wood shuddered as he kicked it. Rosie started to cry, a thin, terrified wail. Jake heard it. His tone changed. See? She wants her dad. I got rights. Lena, I'm her father. You can't keep her from me. Lena's fear evaporated, replaced by cold, protective rage. She unlocked the door, opening it just 3 inches, her body braced against it. You have no rights. You signed nothing. You left. Get away from my door, or I'm calling the police. Jake's eyes, bloodshot and mean, narrowed. He shoved the door, but she held it firm. You call the cops, and I'll tell them what kind of mother you are. I'll tell them you dance in a cage for drunks. I'll tell them you leave her alone all night. Mr. Navarro watches her. An old man? The court will love that. He smiled, knowing he'd found the nerve. I'll get her. Lena, I swear to God, I'll take her from you. Now give me some money. Get out, she screamed. Slamming the door and throwing the deadbolt, she slid to the floor, hands shaking, as he pounded a few more times, shouting obscenities, before his heavy footsteps finally receded down the stairs. Lena crawled to the crib and picked up Rosie, burying her face in the baby's soft neck, trying to stifle her sobs. He had found her. He knew where she worked. He knew about Rosie. That same afternoon, in a steel and glass office overlooking the industrial yards of Northmore, Dante Vascari listened to a grainy audio recording. It was the feed from the discreet microphone one of his men had placed in the stairwell of Lena's building 2 weeks ago. He heard the pounding, the threats, the baby crying. Rico stood by the window, arms crossed. Jake Riley, small-time hustler, owes money to every bookie south of the river. Nothing we can't handle. Dante's face was stone. He replayed the last threat. I'll take her from you. Find him, Dante said, his voice lethally quiet. I want to know where he sleeps. I want to know who he owes. I want to know what he's afraid of. And then? Rico asked. Then we wait and put a car on her building, a real one, 24 hours, unmarked. I want to know if he breathes in her direction again. That night, Lena went to work. She felt exposed, raw. Jake's threats echoed in her head with every beat of the music. She had to make money. She had to make enough to disappear. She needed a new apartment, a new city, a new life. The desperation made her frantic. She painted on the smile, but it was a grimace. Her movements were sharp, jerky, lacking any of the tired grace she usually managed. She was dancing out of sheer animal panic in the balcony. Dante watched. He saw the change. The brittle exhaustion was gone, replaced by a raw, jagged terror. It made him sick. After her last set, she practically ran to the dressing room. She had to get home. She had to get to Rosie. She fumbled with the combination on her locker. The metal door swung open, and she stopped. Inside, sitting on her worn sneakers, was a single, perfect, deep red rose. Its petals were like velvet, and the thorns had been carefully, meticulously removed. Beneath it was a plain white envelope. Her name, Lena, was written on the front in clean, strong, unfamiliar script. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely open it. Her first thought was Jake, a sick, twisted apology, a down payment on his threat. She tore it open. Inside was a stack of bills, crisp, clean, $100 bills. She counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. $500. No note. No name. She backed away from the locker, the money clutched in her hand. This was worse. This was not Jake. Jake didn't have $500, and he didn't write in script. This was one of the men from the club, one of the faces she tried not to see. It was a payment. A down payment for what? The private shows her boss kept pushing? The air in the room felt thin. She felt watched. She shoved the money and the rose into her bag, slammed the locker, and fled. She ran the 6 blocks home, her heart in her throat, flinching at every shadow, every passing car. 2 blocks away, an armored sedan sat in the shadows of an alley. Dante watched her run, her small figure illuminated for a second as she passed under a flickering streetlight. He saw the fear in the set of her shoulders. Rico sat in the driver's seat, his expression grim. You gave her the money. It was a statement. Dante's jaw was tight. He had sent the money through the club manager, a man on his payroll, ordering it delivered anonymously. It was meant to be a buffer, enough for her to buy formula, maybe put down a deposit on a safer apartment. He thought it would give her breathing room. He had been wrong. He had given a weapon to her fear. She thinks it's from a customer, Dante said, watching her disappear into the corner store. Or him. She's a civilian, boss, Rico said, his voice low. Our world, our gifts. They don't look the same to them. To her, that envelope is a threat. Dante watched the light come on in the apartment window above the store. He felt the familiar, agonizing pull, the urge to step out of the car, walk up those stairs, and fix it, to tell her she was safe. But he knew the truth. The moment he stepped into her world, she would never be safe again. Drive, he commanded, his voice rough. The car slipped into the night, leaving Lena Hart alone in her small, cold room. staring at $500 that felt less like a lifeline and more like a chain. The $500 lay on Lena's kitchen counter for 2 full days, a rectangle of pure menace. She stared at it while she heated Rosie's bottles, the last precious scoop of formula scraping the bottom of the can. She stared at it while she hand-washed Rosie's sleepers in the sink, wringing them out until her knuckles were white. It felt dirty. It felt like a trap. A rose and cash. It was the oldest transaction in the world, and she wanted no part of it. She imagined some fleshy, cologne-drenched man from the club's front tables. A man who thought this bought him access. A man who might follow her, who might wait for her, who might think he now owned a piece of her time. But on the 3rd morning, Rosie woke with a low, fussy cry. She was hungry. The can was empty. The last of the diaper cream was gone. The October wind rattled the window frame, and Lena looked at the thin blanket in the crib. The money was not a trap. It was a lifeline. And she was a mother before she was anything else. "I'll pay it back," she whispered to the empty room, as if making a promise to the anonymous sender. "Whoever you are, I'll find you, and I'll pay this back." She tucked $200 into her shoe and went out. She bought the large can of formula, not the small one. She bought 2 thick fleece sleepers, a package of thermal socks, and a heavy winter hat that covered Rosie's ears. She bought diaper cream, baby aspirin, and a box of rice cereal. She even bought a small, stuffed bear, the first toy Rosie had ever owned that wasn't a plastic spoon. Walking back, the bags felt heavy, but her shoulders felt lighter. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was overshadowed by the fierce, primal relief of providing. That night, she returned to the Velvet Pearl with a new resolve. She would work, she would save, and she would get out. She was reapplying her lipstick in the cramped dressing room when Sal, the club owner, leaned against the doorframe. Sal was a man who seemed perpetually damp, his thin hair slicked back, his shirt collar always a little too tight. "Lena, my star," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "You looked good out there tonight. Really good." "Thanks, Sal." She capped the lipstick, avoiding his gaze in the mirror. "You know, you're wasting your talent out on the main stage. The real money, the smart money, is in the VIP rooms." Lena's hand tightened on the tube. "I told you, Sal, I'm not doing private shows. It's not like that," he wheezed. Taking a step into the room, the smell of cheap cigars rolled off him. "It's just dancing. More intimate. The tips are astronomical. A girl like you could make what's in that envelope every single night." Lena froze. She turned slowly. "What envelope?" Sal's eyes flickered. He'd made a mistake. "You know, the tips. The envelope you get your pay in." He was a terrible liar. He knew about the money. He had been the one to put it in her locker, which meant he knew who it was from. "I'm not interested. Sal, please get out of the dressing room." His smile vanished. "Don't get proud. Lena, you're replaceable. We all are. But that kind of attention from upstairs, that's rare. You'd be stupid to waste it." He backed out, leaving the threat hanging in the air. She went out for her second set, her skin crawling, attention from upstairs. He meant the VIP balcony, the smoked glass. She danced, but this time, her eyes kept drifting up to that dark, unreadable window. She felt pinned, like a butterfly under glass. She was finishing, her breath coming in short, angry bursts, when a commotion erupted near the club's entrance. "I paid the cover. I'm here to see her." Lena's blood ran cold. It was Jake. He shoved past the bouncer, his eyes wild and bloodshot. He was drunk, high, or both. He stumbled into the center of the room, pointing directly at her on the stage. "There she is. That's her. Lena." The music faltered. The patrons turned. "See? Dancing for all these losers," he yelled, a sick, possessive pride in his voice. "That's my girl. That's my Rosie's mom. Go on. Lena, dance for me. Show me what you show them." "Sal, get him out of here," Lena hissed, backing toward the curtain. "Jake, you need to leave," Sal said, trying to sound authoritative and failing. "I ain't leaving till I talk to her." Jake lunged for the stage. Lena scrambled backward, her ankle twisting. Before he could take a second step, 2 bouncers, massive men who usually stayed by the VIP elevator, grabbed him. They were efficient, brutal. They didn't just escort him out, they lifted him, one by his belt, one by the collar, and carried him toward the door. "You can't hide from me, Lena," he screamed, his feet kicking. "I'll see you at home, I'll be waiting. You hear me? I'll be waiting for you and the kid." The door slammed shut, cutting off the threat. The club was silent for a beat. Then the music stuttered back to life. Lena was shaking, not with fear, but with white-hot rage. He had threatened Rosie. Here, in this place, upstairs, in the shadows. Dante Vascari placed his glass on the table with a quiet, definitive click. The ice hadn't even melted. Rico, standing behind him, leaned in. "The word? Intercept," Dante said, his voice flat. "Warn him. Make it clear. Then make him disappear. I don't care how. He's not to get within 5 blocks of her or the child again. And if he doesn't listen," Dante turned his head, his eyes meeting Rico's in the dim light, "then he won't be able to." Rico nodded. He pulled out his phone, typed a short message, and slipped from the room. Jake Riley didn't make it 2 blocks from the Velvet Pearl. A black town car cut him off, forcing him into an alleyway smelling of wet cardboard and spoiled food. 2 men got out. They were not large like the bouncers. They were neat, in dark suits, their movements economical. They didn't punch him. They didn't kick him. They merely held him. One man pinned his arms. The other placed a hand over his mouth. Rico stepped from the car. He adjusted his cuffs and looked at Jake with an expression of profound boredom. "Jake Riley, you've been making a nuisance of yourself," Rico said, his voice conversational. "That stops. Now." Jake's eyes widened, the drunken haze vanishing, replaced by the sharp, metallic taste of genuine fear. He knew who these men were. Everyone in Northmore knew the Vascari syndicate. "You will not go near Lena Hart's apartment," Rico continued. "You will not go to her place of work. You will not speak her name. You will not speak the child's name. You are going to get on a bus tonight, and you are going to go visit whatever family you have left in whatever miserable town you came from. You will not come back." Rico leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Because if you do, if we see you, if we hear of you, if you even think about her, we will unmake you, piece by piece. Do you understand me?" Jake nodded frantically, tears of terror mixing with the sweat on his face. "Good," Rico motioned to the men. "Put him on the 10:30 bus to anywhere. Give him 100 for the ticket and break 1 finger. Just 1, as a reminder, for the bus ride." Jake let out a muffled scream as the man holding his hand applied precise, educated pressure. A sharp, wet snap echoed in the alley. They dropped him by the bus station. He scrambled aboard the first bus, leaving the city, clutching his shattered hand, sobbing. He never looked back. The next day, Lena's phone rang. It was an unknown number. She was rocking Rosie, trying to get her to nap. She answered, her voice wary. "Hello?" Silence. Just the faint sound of static, like someone breathing. "Hello? Who is this?" A voice spoke. It was male, deep, and impossibly quiet, like gravel wrapped in velvet. It was a voice that didn't sound like it was ever used for shouting. "Don't be afraid." Lena sat up, her heart stopping. "Who is this? Is this about Jake?" "No one will hurt you again," the voice said, and the line went dead. She stared at the phone, her hand shaking. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't Jake, it was something else. A statement, a promise. It scared her more than Jake's yelling ever had. That night at the club, Sal wouldn't meet her eyes. He just grunted when she clocked in. When she went to her locker at the end of her shift, there was no rose. Instead, there was a large, heavy-duty duffel bag. She unzipped it slowly. Inside, 3 large cans of the exact formula she used, boxes of diapers, wipes, baby aspirin, a thick wool blanket, a white envelope containing a gift card to the grocery store downtown. The card had a balance of $1,000. This was too much. This was not a gift. It was surveillance. She ran out of the dressing room and cornered Sal as he was counting the register. "Who is it?" she demanded, her voice low and fierce. "Who is leaving these things? It was you, wasn't it? You put it in my locker." Sal looked terrified. He raised his hands. "Lena, I just do what I'm told. I'm just the delivery guy. It's from a patron, an admirer. He wants to help you. He said you're a good mother." "A patron? Who? The man upstairs?" "Just take the help, kid," Sal said, his voice dropping. "Don't ask questions. These aren't people you ask questions of. Just take it and be grateful. And for God's sake, stop refusing the VIP rooms. You're making me look bad." She left the club feeling dizzy, the heavy duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The anonymous gifts, the phone call, Jake's sudden, total disappearance. It was all connected. Someone was watching her, someone powerful. Her friend Nina, another dancer, caught up with her at the corner. Nina was older, her humor as sharp as her eyeliner. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Nina said, lighting a cigarette. "I think I'm losing my mind. Nina?" Lena explained the money, the phone call, the bag full of baby supplies. Nina took a long drag, her eyes narrowing. "Honey, you haven't lost your mind. You found a guardian angel, a very rich, very scary guardian angel. That's not funny, it's terrifying." "Who said it was funny?" Nina blew out a stream of smoke. "Look, in this city, there are pigeons and there are hawks. Someone upstairs has decided you're under their wing. This isn't a Wall Street banker leaving you tips. This is different. This is Northmore City. Be smart. Lena, be careful. But don't be stupid." "Hawks don't give gifts for free, but they also don't let anyone else mess with their property." Lena recoiled. "I'm not property." "Of course you aren't," Nina said, softening. "But you're his. Whoever he is, just take the help. God knows you need it. And for heaven's sake, take a cab. Don't walk home after a night like this." Lena shook her head. A cab was $20 she couldn't spare, guardian angel or not. "I'll be fine. I'll see you tomorrow." She clutched the strap of the duffel bag and started the 6-block walk. The streets were empty, slick with a fine mist that made the streetlights blur. The silence was absolute. Until she heard the footsteps. They were heavy, hurried behind her. She didn't look back. She clutched her keys between her fingers, a pathetic, makeshift weapon, and walked faster. The footsteps sped up, closing the distance. A hand grabbed her arm, spinning her around. He was a stranger, thin, his face pockmarked in the yellow light, his eyes wide and desperate. He smelled like chemicals. "Give me the bag," he hissed, yanking the strap. "No, please." Lena tried to pull away, but he was strong, wiry. "Give it to me, bitch." He raised his other hand, and she saw the glint of a pocket knife. She screamed, a high, thin sound that the mist seemed to swallow. She let go of the bag, but he didn't stop. He grabbed the front of her jacket, pulling her toward him. "And the purse. Now." Suddenly, headlights flooded the alley. A car, a long, black, impossibly sleek sedan, had appeared from nowhere, mounting the curb, its engine a low, silent hum. Before the man could even react, the driver's door opened. A man emerged. He was tall, dressed in a dark, perfectly tailored suit. He moved with a speed that was almost unreal. He didn't run, he just arrived. The mugger, blinded by the lights, turned, raising the knife. "Get back, I'll cut." The man in the suit didn't slow down. He caught the mugger's wrist, and Lena heard a sickening crack. The knife clattered to the pavement. The man didn't stop. He delivered 2 short, brutal, utterly silent blows to the mugger's ribs. The man crumpled, wheezing, to the ground. It was over in 3 seconds. The tall man didn't even look at the body. He turned to Lena. She was pressed against the brick wall, her hand over her mouth, her entire body vibrating. She looked at her rescuer, his face half in shadow, half in the glare of his own headlights. It was a strong face, all harsh angles and control. His eyes, she couldn't see their color, but she felt them. They were the same feeling as the smoked glass on the VIP balcony. It was him. He said nothing. He simply bent down, picked up the duffel bag, and opened the car's back door. It was an invitation, an order. Lena was too terrified to refuse. She scrambled into the back seat, the leather cold against her skin. He dropped the bag on the seat beside her, closed the door, and got into the driver's seat. The mugger was still groaning on the sidewalk as the car pulled smoothly, silently, back onto the street. They drove. The car was silent, insulated from the city. It smelled of rich leather and something clean and cold, like winter. Lena stared at the back of his head. His hair was dark, thick, precisely cut. She could see his eyes in the rearview mirror. He was watching her. "Who are you?" she finally whispered, her voice hoarse. He didn't answer. Did you send the money, the phone call?" Silence. He just drove, his large hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. "Please," she begged, the adrenaline fading, leaving her feeling cold and very small. "Where are you taking me?" He finally spoke. His voice was the one from the phone, deep, quiet, final. Home. The car was filled with a tension so thick Lena could barely breathe. She was terrified of him. He was a man who broke other men without a word, but as she looked at him, at the set of his jaw, at the way he navigated the dark, dangerous streets of her neighborhood, she felt something else, a strange, unwanted, terrifying pull. She had never, in her entire life, felt this unsafe, and she had never, in her entire life, felt this protected. He pulled up in front of her building. Mr. Navarro's store was dark. Lena fumbled for the door handle. "Don't," he said. She froze. "Don't walk home alone again." She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She got out of the car, grabbing the heavy duffel bag. She expected him to drive away. He didn't. He cut the engine, the headlights dying, plunging the street back into shadow. He got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk, watching her. He was waiting for her to be safe inside. Lena ran to the door, fumbled with her key, and scrambled into the entryway. She slammed the door shut, locked it, and leaned against it, her heart trying to escape her chest. She heard the sound of a car door closing and the engine turning over. Then silence. He was gone. Lena stood inside her apartment, the deadbolt shot, her back pressed against the wood. Her breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. Rosie was asleep in her crib, oblivious, her tiny snores the only peaceful sound in the world. He was still out there. She crept to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. The black sedan was exactly where he had left it, a void of shadow under the flickering streetlight. He was just sitting there, watching her door, a silent, terrifying sentinel. The adrenaline from the mugging was still coursing through her, but it was curdling into something new. Anger. She was tired of being hunted by Jake, by poverty, by strangers with knives, and now by this silent man with his ghosts and his violence. She checked Rosie, tucked the blanket tighter, and walked out of the apartment. She marched down the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the silence, and burst through the front door onto the sidewalk. The night air was cold, and it bit at her thin jacket. But she didn't care. He didn't seem surprised. The driver's window glided down, revealing his face, all hard angles and shadow. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "What do you want?" she demanded. Her voice shook, but she held his gaze. "Who are you?" He was quiet for a long moment, simply absorbing her, her fear, her defiance. "My name is Dante." "Dante, just Dante?" she scoffed, though her heart was hammering. "What kind of man? You broke that man's wrist. You didn't even flinch." "He had a knife," Dante stated, as if it were the simplest explanation in the world. "He was going to hurt you. And the money? The formula? The phone call? Was that you?" "Yes." "Why?" she cried, the word tearing out of her. "Why are you doing this? Do you think you can buy me? Do you think because I work there?" "No." He cut her off, his voice sharp, but not loud. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it? I'm not some charity case, and I'm not your property." His eyes hardened. "I know what you are, Lena, and I know what you're not. You're a mother who needed help." "I don't want your help," she lied. "I want you to leave me alone, all of you." He leaned forward, the faint light from the dashboard illuminating the stark lines of his face. "The man who bothers you, Jake, he won't be back. The man in the alley, he won't bother anyone again. Problems, I make them disappear." Lena swallowed. This was the truth. He wasn't just a rich admirer. He was dangerous. The Hawk, as Nina had called him. You're one of them, aren't you? Mafia. She whispered the word. He didn't confirm. He didn't deny. He just watched her. You shouldn't walk home alone, he said, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. I can't be on this corner every night. He reached into his breast pocket and produced a small, thick, black card. It was blank, except for a string of 10 numbers embossed in silver. Take this, he said. She stared at it. It looked heavy, final. I don't want it. Take it. His voice was not a request. If you are ever in trouble, if you even think you are in trouble, if a man so much as looks at you the wrong way, you call this number. Lena hesitated. To take the card was to accept the deal, to step into his world, a world of shadows and whispered violence. But the memory of the knife blade, the sound of Jake kicking her door. She was already in a world of violence. His was just more organized. Her hand, still trembling, reached out and took the card. It was as heavy as it looked. Go inside. Lena, lock your door. She backed away, clutching the card, and ran back inside. She locked the deadbolt, the chain, and the new flimsy lock she'd bought. She watched from the window until the black sedan's taillights disappeared, leaving the street empty and somehow less safe than it had been a moment ago. 3 days passed. Life settled into a strange, new pattern. She had food in the fridge. Rosie had diapers. She still went to work. But she took a cab home. The $20 fare feeling like a guilty luxury, paid for with the anonymous money. She told herself she was keeping a tally, that she would pay him back. She was in the dressing room at the Velvet Pearl, an hour before her first set, pinning up her hair. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was Mr. Navarro. She smiled, expecting a question about Rosie's bottle. Lena? His voice was thin, breathless, terrified. Lena, you must come. Dios mío, you must come now. Her blood turned to ice. Mr. Navarro, what is it? What's wrong? Is it Rosie? He's gone now. I scared him. But he broke the door. Mija, he broke your door. Who? Who broke the door? The man, he panted. The one you warned me about. Jake, he came. He was yelling. He used his shoulder. He broke the lock. Rosie was screaming. I grabbed the old rolling pin from the panaderia. I ran up. I shouted I was calling the police. He saw me, and he ran. He ran out the back. Lena, he was here. He was in your home. Lena dropped the phone. She didn't clock out. She didn't grab her bag. She bolted from the dressing room, shoving past Sal, who yelled after her. She ran out into the street, a frantic, keening sound in her throat. She ran 2 blocks, her dancer's shoes slapping the pavement before she stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk. She was running to the apartment where Rosie was, where Jake had just been. What if he was waiting? What if he came back? She was running into the trap, and she had no weapon, no plan, nothing. She was helpless. Her hand flew to her pocket, her fingers closing around the thick, black card. She pulled it out, her fingers fumbling with the numbers on her phone. She dialed. It rang only once, a sharp, electronic click before he answered. Yes. The voice was calm, clear, and instantly recognizable. It's Lena, she choked out, tears of panic streaming down her face. He broke in. Jake, he broke into my apartment. Rosie was there. Mr. Navarro scared him off, but he was inside. Where are you? His voice was no longer calm. It was ice, cold, sharp, and absolutely furious. I'm on the corner of Elm and 9th. I was running from the club. Stay there. Do not move. I'm 3 minutes away. The line went dead. She didn't know if it was 2 minutes or 10. She stood frozen on the corner, vibrating with terror. A black sedan. Not the one he'd been driving, but a larger, heavier-looking SUV. Screeched to a halt in front of her. The back door flew open. Dante was inside. With him was Rico, and another man she didn't know, both in dark suits. Get in, Dante commanded. She scrambled in. He was there. He was in the room with her. Is she with Navarro? Dante asked. his eyes fixed forward as the car sped through the streets. Yes, Mr. Navarro has her. Good. The car slammed to a stop in front of her building. Rico and the other man were out before it fully stopped, disappearing into the storefront. Dante turned to her in the back seat. His face was a mask of controlled rage. Go to Navarro's. Get your daughter. Do not go upstairs until I come for you. She nodded, numb, and ran into the store. Mr. Navarro was behind the counter, holding a sleeping Rosie, his face pale. He's here, Lena whispered, taking Rosie from him. The man from the car. He's here. He's helping. Mr. Navarro just nodded, his eyes wide. Lena held Rosie so tight the baby stirred, fussing in her sleep. After 5 minutes, that felt like an eternity. Dante appeared at the store's inner door. It's clear, he said. Lena walked past him, up the stairs. The apartment door was open, the frame splintered, wood shards scattered on the floor. Rico was on his phone by the window, speaking in low, rapid Italian. The other man was just coming in from the fire escape, shaking his head. Dante walked past her, into the tiny kitchen. He ran a hand over the shattered door jamb. He came in the front, Rico said. Exited via the fire escape when Navarro spooked him. He's gone, for now. He won't be, for long, Dante said. He turned to Lena. My men will be outside, one in the hallway, one on the street. No one will get in here again. You have my word. Rico and the other man nodded and left, closing the broken door as best they could. Suddenly, she and Dante were alone in the tiny apartment. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and Rosie's soft breathing. The adrenaline crashed. Lena's knees buckled. She slumped against the kitchen counter. Rosie clutched to her chest. You should sit, Dante said. His voice was rough. He pulled out one of the 2 flimsy wooden chairs from her tiny table and pushed it toward her. She sank into it. And she broke. The tears came, hot and silent. The whole pathetic story spilled out of her. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered, her voice cracking. He left me. The day I told him I was pregnant, he just left, and I had nothing. I worked until the day she was born. I dance in that place. Just to buy formula. And he thinks he can just take her. She looked up at him, her face wet. I have no one. Dante, I'm so tired of being alone and so scared he's going to win. He's going to take her from me. Dante stood over her, a dark, imposing shadow. He watched her cry, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, the stone facade cracked. The coldness in his eyes receded, replaced by a deep, profound, and familiar ache. He looked moved. He pulled out the other chair and sat opposite her, their knees almost touching. You are not alone, he said, his voice husky. He hesitated, as if deciding whether to cross a line he had drawn for himself years ago. I watch you, he began, his voice low. I told myself it was because you were vulnerable, but it was something else. He looked at Rosie, asleep in Lena's arms. I lost someone. Years ago, before this. He gestured vaguely at himself, the suit, the power that surrounded him. Her name was Sophia. We grew up together. She was good. She saw things in me that weren't there. Not yet. His jaw tightened, his gaze becoming distant, lost in a past only he could see. She was pregnant, 5 months. We were going to leave, go somewhere clean. He stopped, taking a sharp breath. It was a car bomb. It wasn't for her. It was for me. I was late. I was held up in a meeting. His voice was flat, dead, devoid of all emotion. I wasn't there to protect her. I lost them both, because of what I am. He finally raised his eyes to hers. They were raw, stripped of all pretense. And then I saw you. On that stage, you had the same exhaustion in your eyes, the same fight. But you had her. He nodded at Rosie. You had your child, and I couldn't look away. I told myself it was protection, but it was penance for Sophia. The confession hung in the small, cold kitchen. Lena finally understood. It wasn't obsession, it wasn't lust, it was grief, it was a ghost. She stared at him, at this powerful, broken man. Without thinking, she reached across the small table. Her fingers, still trembling, landed on his forearm. His arm was rigid, like steel beneath the expensive fabric, but he didn't pull away. He flinched, almost imperceptibly, as if the simple human touch was a shock. Lena didn't move her hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. For Sophia." He looked down at her small hand on his arm and closed his eyes. She slept that night, for the first time in nearly a year. She slept deeply, soundly. A man in a dark suit sat on a chair outside her repaired door. Another sat in a car on the street below. She was, for this one night, the most protected woman in Northmore City. Her dreams were simple. She was in a small park, the grass green. Rosie was toddling, her first steps. Rosie stumbled and Lena gasped, but a pair of large, strong hands caught her before she fell. Lena looked up, and it was Dante. He was smiling, a real, warm smile, as he lifted Rosie high into the air. The next night, she went to work. The guard, a new man, drove her. He said his orders were to take her to and from the club. Lena didn't argue. When she walked onto the stage, the club felt different. The men at the tables, the smoky air, Sal's fake smile, it was all still there, but it couldn't touch her. She knew she was being watched, but the feeling had changed. It was no longer the gaze of a predator. It was the gaze of a protector. She looked up at the VIP balcony. He wasn't in the shadows. He was standing at the railing in plain sight. The pink and blue lights washing over his dark suit. He wasn't drinking. He was just watching her. His face was unreadable, but his presence was an electric charge in the room. He was watching her like she was something fragile, something precious, something powerful. After her last set, she knew he would be there. She walked into the dim hallway leading to the dressing rooms. He was waiting, leaning against the far wall, a king in a borrowed, shabby palace. The bouncers were conspicuously absent. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her heart starting a low. Heavy rhythm against her ribs. "My men are at your apartment. The door is secure." "You're safe." He didn't move. "That's not what I meant. It's not safe for you to be seen here, with me." He pushed off the wall, taking one slow step toward her. "I'm not the one who's in danger." "Dante," she whispered, "why are you doing this? What you told me about Sophia, that's your past. This is my life. They can't mix." It's too late. He took another step. He was in her space now, so close she had to tilt her head back to look at him. He blocked out the dim hallway light, casting her in his shadow. She could smell the clean, cold scent of his suit, the faint, warm, masculine scent of his skin. His eyes, dark and intense, dropped from her eyes to her mouth. The air between them grew thick, charged, vibrating with everything unsaid. This wasn't a choice. It was inevitable. It was gravity. He lowered his head, his movements slow, deliberate, giving her every second to retreat. His hand came up, not to grab, but to graze. His fingers, warm and slightly rough, brushed a strand of damp hair from her temple. The light, reverent touch sent a shiver through her entire body. She leaned in. Her eyes fluttered closed. She wanted this. She wanted the safety. She wanted the strength. After a lifetime of being weak and abandoned, she wanted to be held by the strongest thing in the room. Their lips were a breath apart. She could feel the heat radiating from him, and she flinched. The image of Jake, his face, his hands, his sloppy, demanding kisses, the violation of her home, the memory of every man who had ever looked at her with hunger. It all came rushing back in a tidal wave of ice. She pulled back, her hand flying to her chest, her breath catching in a sob. "I can't." Dante froze. His eyes flew open. He wasn't angry. He looked pained. He understood. He saw the terror that went deeper than just Jake. He saw the wound. He nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin. He took a half step back, immediately giving her space, breaking the spell. "Okay," he said, his voice raspy. thick. "Okay, Lena." He turned, his back rigid, and walked away without another word. Lena was left shaking in the hallway, her lips burning, her entire body aching from a kiss that had never even happened. Dante's decision, made in that dim hallway outside her dressing room, was final. The shadows were no longer enough. His protection became overt, a visible, tangible thing. The black SUV was parked outside her apartment day and night. The man in the suit, a rotating member of his personal detail, no longer sat in the hallway but stood, respectfully, near the building's entrance. He drove her to the club, waited, and drove her back. At the Velvet Pearl, Sal now treated her with a terrified deference, as if she were made of glass. The other dancers gave her a wide berth, their curiosity mixed with a new, palpable fear. Lena was no longer just one of them. She was, as Nina had put it, his. This shift did not go unnoticed, either inside or outside Dante's organization. "You're painting a target on her," Rico said, his voice low and urgent. They were in Dante's office. The city lights of Northmore spread out below them like a field of cold jewels. "You put your face, your car, your men on a civilian? You just told every rival in this city where to stick the knife. She's not a target. She's protected," Dante stated, his back to Rico, his gaze fixed on the city. "It's the same thing." Rico slammed his hand on the polished mahogany desk. "Dante, for 10 years you have been a ghost. No connections, no weaknesses. Now in 3 weeks, you have one. A big one, a dancer and her kid. The whispers have already started. They're saying the head of the Viscari syndicate has gone soft, that he's distracted. Let them whisper," Dante said, his voice dangerously quiet. "They're not just whispering. Marco Esteban is listening." Dante turned slowly. The name hung in the air, cold and heavy. Marco Esteban, head of the Esteban cartel, a man who dealt in human misery, a rival who lacked any of Dante's sense of archaic honor. Esteban was a butcher, and he was hungry for Viscari's territory. "Esteban knows nothing," Dante said. "He knows you're spending your nights at a strip club. He knows you've pulled 2 of your best men for a babysitting detail," Rico countered. "He smells blood in the water, boss, and you're the one chumming it." Dante's jaw tightened. He knew Rico was right. He had exposed her. He had let his penance for Sophia override his discipline. The proof came 2 days later. Lena was taking Rosie for a walk to the small, concrete park 3 blocks from her apartment. It was the first sunny afternoon in a week. Her guard, a man named Tino, stayed 20 feet behind, pretending to read a newspaper. Lena felt like an animal in a very small, very public cage. A dark green van, unremarkable, passed them once. It passed them again, slowing down. Lena's stomach tightened. Tino had noticed it, too. He folded his newspaper, his hand slipping inside his jacket. The van stopped at the corner. A man got out of the passenger side, ostensibly to look at a map. He was watching her. He was watching Rosie. Lena grabbed the stroller and turned, walking quickly back toward the apartment. Tino was beside her in an instant. "Walk, don't run," he said, his voice calm. "Get inside the store, now." Lena pushed the stroller into Mr. Navarro's shop, her heart hammering. "Mr. Navarro looked up, startled, as Tino stepped inside behind her, pulling the door shut and locking it. "Call him," Tino said to Lena, his eyes on the street. The green van had parked across the street. The man was still outside, lighting a cigarette, watching. Lena didn't have to ask who he was. She dialed the number. Dante answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "We're being watched," Lena said, her voice trembling. "A green van, a man, Tino, my guard. He made us go inside Mr. Navarro's." There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath. Then, Dante's voice, devoid of all emotion. "Rico?" She heard Rico's voice in the background. "On it? Sending 2 cars." "Lena," Dante said, his voice a razor's edge. "Stay inside. Do not leave Navarro. Do not go upstairs. My men will be there in 5 minutes. I will be there in 10. He was there in 8. He didn't come in the sedan. He came in the armored SUV. which pulled up, blocking the street. By the time he stepped out, 2 other cars had converged, pinning the green van. Dante's men, 4 of them, pulled the driver and the passenger from the van with brutal efficiency, shoving them against the wall. Lena watched through the store window, her hand over Rosie's ears. Dante stormed into the store. He wasn't the calm, quiet man from her kitchen. This was a different person. His face was a mask of cold, white-hot fury. He didn't look at Tino. He didn't look at Navarro. He looked at her and Rosie. "Pack a bag," he commanded. "What? Dante, what's happening?" "They're Esteban's men. They were tailing you. They were watching the child." He said the words like they were acid on his tongue. "You're not safe here. Not anymore. Pack a bag, now." I can't just leave." "Yes, you can." He took a step toward her. "Lena, they will not stop. They will wait until my man is gone. They will wait until you are alone. They will use her." He nodded at Rosie. "To get to me. You are coming with me. This is not a request." He turned to Tino. "Get her upstairs. Get whatever she needs for the child. You have 2 minutes." Tino hustled a stunned Lina up the stairs. She moved on autopilot, grabbing the diaper bag, shoving formula, diapers, sleepers, and Rosie's new bear into a duffel bag. She grabbed her own toothbrush and a change of clothes. The whole time, she could hear Dante's voice, low and angry, speaking in Italian on the street below. She was bundled into the back of the SUV. Rosie strapped into a high-end car seat that seemed to have materialized from nowhere. Dante got in beside her. The doors locked with a heavy, final thunk. "Where are we going?" she whispered as the car sped away, leaving her apartment, her street, her entire life behind. "Somewhere safe," he said, his gaze fixed forward. "An estate I own, north of the city. It's temporary, until I handle Esteban." They drove for an hour, leaving the grime of Northmore City behind, moving into rolling hills and thick forests. They passed through a set of massive, wrought-iron gates flanked by guards. A long, winding driveway led to a house that was less a house and more a fortress, built of dark stone and sheer glass, overlooking a vast, empty valley. It was beautiful, and it was the most isolated place Lena had ever seen. The house was run by a silent, efficient staff. Within minutes, Lena and Rosie were shown to a suite of rooms that was larger than her entire apartment. It had a sitting area, a fireplace, a crib that was already set up, and a bathroom made of marble. "This is..." she faltered. "Dante, this is too much." "It's secure," he said, standing in the doorway, his shoulders rigid, his hands clenched. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a self-loathing she had never seen. "This is my fault, Lena. I brought this to your door." "You brought protection," she countered, her voice quiet. "I brought a war." He looked at Rosie, who was sitting on the plush carpet, looking around with wide, curious eyes. "They will feed you. Anything you need. You ask. I have to go back. I have to fix this." "Wait," Lena said as he turned to leave. "Will you?" She hesitated. He stopped, turning. "What? Will you hold her? Just for a minute?" Dante looked from Lena to Rosie, his expression one of pure conflict. He was the car bomb. He was the danger. He was the man who lost children. Lena picked Rosie up and held her out. "Please, she's not afraid of you." Slowly, as if approaching a live explosive, Dante stepped forward. He held out his large, scarred hands. They were trembling, just slightly. Lena gently placed Rosie in his arms. He was stiff, awkward, holding her like she was a priceless, fragile vase. Rosie, sensing the tension, looked up at his dark, serious face. She stared for a long moment. Then, her face split into a wide, gummy, 9-month-old grin. She let out a delighted shriek and grabbed a fistful of his expensive silk tie. Shoving it toward her mouth, Dante froze. He looked at the baby drooling on his tie, and the tension in his shoulders, the fury in his jaw, the self-hatred in his eyes. It all just evaporated. A small, stunned, almost pained sound escaped his throat. Rosie giggled and bounced in his arms. Lena watched as the most feared man in Northmore City, Dante Viscari, the head of the syndicate, melted. He held the baby close, his large hand spreading protectively over her tiny back. He was still for a long time, just breathing her in. When he finally looked up at Lena, his eyes were raw. He stayed for 2 days. He claimed he was working from the estate's office, but Lena knew he was staying for them. He ate his meals with her. He sat on the floor and wordlessly rolled a ball back and forth with Rosie. He watched Lena, a quiet, constant presence, for the first time in months. Lena slept without fear. She ate without worrying about the cost. She watched the rain lash against the bulletproof windows and felt safe. On the second night, the rain was a deluge, a solid wall of water beating against the house. Rosie was asleep. The staff had disappeared. Lena found Dante in the garden, a covered stone atrium at the center of the house, open to the storm but shielded from the wind. He was standing by a stone bench, watching the rain fall. "You should be asleep," he said, not turning. "So should you." She walked to his side, wrapping her arms around herself. The air was cold and smelled of wet stone and ozone. They stood in silence for a long time, just watching the storm. "I was in labor for 16 hours, Lena said suddenly, the confession pulled from her by the darkness and the rain. Dante turned, his face unreadable in the shadows. "I was alone," she continued, her voice a whisper. Jake, he'd been gone for months. I had no one to call. I took a bus to the hospital. All alone. And the pain. I thought I was going to die. I kept begging the nurse to just let me go. I was so tired, I hadn't eaten. I gave up." She was crying now, silent tears mixing with the mist from the rain. Then they put her on my chest, this tiny, screaming, purple thing, and she just stopped crying. She just looked at me, and I knew I could never give up, not ever, even if it meant dancing. She looked at him, her face a mask of old, deep pain. "I hate being alone, Dante, more than being poor, more than being hungry. I hate being scared and alone." Dante looked at her, his heart, a thing he'd thought long dead, breaking in his chest. He saw the girl on the bus. He saw the terror in the hospital room. He saw the strength that had kept her going. He stepped forward, his hand coming up to cup her face. His thumb, rough and warm, wiped a tear from her cheek. "You will never be alone again, Lena," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. He lowered his head and kissed her. It was not the hungry, charged moment in the hallway. This was different. It was achingly gentle. It was a promise. His lips were soft, questioning, seeking. He was giving her every chance to pull away. She leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, her fingers clutching his shirt. She kissed him back, a desperate, grateful, hungry kiss. He deepened it, his other hand sliding around her waist, pulling her flush against him. He was solid, warm, a wall against the storm, overcome. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, sitting her on the cold stone bench, stepping between her knees, bringing his body into hers, still kissing her, his mouth slanting over hers. It was slow, it was deep. It was not a kiss of lust, it was a kiss of finding, of two broken, lonely people finally touching. His hands moved from her waist, one tangling in her hair, tilting her head back, the other tracing the line of her jaw. Her hands clutched his shoulders, pulling him closer, anchoring herself to him. It was a slow burn, an unfolding of emotion that had been held back for a lifetime. Finally, breathless, they broke apart. They rested their foreheads together, breathing the same air. "Dante," she panted, her voice shaky. "I know," he said, his voice rough. I won't rush you. Lena, not after everything." She pulled back just enough to see his face. His eyes, dark and intense, were full of her, full of a raw vulnerability that matched her own. She raised a trembling hand and placed it on his cheek. He flinched, but didn't pull away, closing his eyes, leaning into her touch. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. His hand covered hers, pressing it flat against his face, and he kissed her palm. The peace was shattered the next morning. While Lena was feeling safe for the first time, her old life was still churning. Jake, spiraling from his sudden lack of access and money, his broken finger a throbbing reminder, found Nina outside the club. "Where is she?" he demanded, grabbing her arm. "That old man at the store won't say nothing. Where did that bastard in the suit take her? Get your hands off me, Jake," Nina hissed, ripping her arm away. "She's gone. She's somewhere you can't touch her. Get lost, you're poison." "She's mine," he screamed, his face mottled. "And that kid is mine. I'm gonna find her." He stormed off into the night, a desperate, pathetic ghost. But his chaotic, noisy threat was nothing compared to the cold, strategic one. In the gleaming kitchen of the estate, Dante's phone buzzed on the counter. It was an unknown number. He answered, his eyes on Lena, who was feeding Rosie. He listened. His face went blank. Utterly, terrifyingly blank. "When?" was all he said. He listened again. He hung up. "Dante?" Lena asked, seeing the change. "What is it?" Rico's phone buzzed. He looked at it. It was a video message. He played it. The video was grainy. Shot in a dark, damp room. Mister. Navarro was tied to a chair. His face was bloodied. His kind eyes were wide with terror. A voice spoke off camera. In Spanish. "Vescari, we have your weakness. Not the new one, the old one, the one you left behind. A warning, back off, or the old man pays for your mistake." Dante watched the video, his expression unmoving, but Lena saw his hand, resting on the counter, clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. Marco Esteban hadn't just found his weakness. He had found her weakness. "Oh my God," Lena breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mr. Navarro, they have him, because of me." "It's not because of you," Dante bit out, the fury rolling off him in waves. "It's because of me." He turned to Rico. "Find him." "Boss, this is a trap," Rico said, his face pale. "They want you to come running. They want to bait you out. You go after Navarro. You start a war. And she—" He nodded at Lena. "Will be at the center of it." Dante was torn. He was trapped. If he acted, he brought the war Rico predicted. He would be forced to bring Lena deeper into his world, a world that would destroy her. If he stayed hidden, if he protected her, Mr. Navarro, a good, innocent man, would die. He looked at Lena, his face a mask of agony. Love or war, her safety or Navarro's life? Lena stood up, her face pale but her eyes blazing. She walked over to him, her gaze locked on his. She had heard Rico. She understood the choice. "He's family, Dante," she said, her voice shaking but full of steel. "He saved my daughter. We are not leaving him." "Lena, you don't understand." "I understand." She cut him off. "I understand that you want to hide me here to keep me safe, but I will not be safe knowing he's being tortured because of us. You can't make that choice for me. We save him. We save him. Together." Dante stared at her, seeing not the terrified dancer from the stage, but a woman as strong as the stone walls around them. She was not a weakness. She was his partner. "Rico," Dante said, his decision made. "Get the men. We're going back to the city." The journey back to Northmore City was a high-speed, silent descent into a war zone. They did not go to Lena's apartment. The convoy of black SUVs moved through the city's arteries to a Vescari-owned safe house, a nondescript luxury penthouse shielded by reinforced steel, one-way glass, and a private elevator. It was as secure as the estate, but it was back in the heart of the beast. The moment they entered, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The main room had been converted into a command center. Rico and 3 other men were at a glass table covered in blueprints of a warehouse district near the docks. Phones buzzed, and voices were kept to low, professional murmurs. Dante was no longer the man who had kissed her in the rain. He was the boss, his face a mask of cold strategy. He issued orders, his voice a low, authoritative rumble. Lena felt utterly useless, a civilian in a war room, clutching Rosie to her chest. Dante saw her, standing alone by the window. He walked over, his expression softening just a fraction. He pulled her away from the glass, a reflex against snipers she could not even imagine. They will find him. Lena, Rico is the best. And then what? She whispered. You'll go there? We will bring him home, he said. His words clipped. He looked at her, at the fear in her eyes, and his expression hardened with a new resolve. But you're not a civilian anymore. Not really. I brought this to you. I have to teach you how to survive it. For the next 2 days, while Rico's team worked, Dante trained her. It was not about weapons. It was about awareness. He took her to the balcony, pointing at the street below. Don't watch faces, he said, his voice at her shoulder. Watch hands. Hands tell the truth. A man reaches inside his jacket. He's either grabbing a phone or a weapon. Assume it's a weapon. He made her walk through the apartment while he followed, teaching her to use reflections in glass, to listen for the absence of sound, the change in the air that meant someone was near. When you walk into a room, he instructed, know where the exits are, both of them, the one you came in and the one you'll use to leave. He was bringing her into his world, trusting her with his paranoia, his tradecraft. He was making her a partner, not just a liability. Finally. He pressed a small, smooth, black-pebbled device into her hand. It had no buttons, just a single, pressure-sensitive panel. This is a panic button, he said, closing her fingers around it. It is not a phone, it is a signal. It goes directly to me and to my personal detail. If you ever feel anything, you press it. You don't wait. You don't second-guess. You press it. It is faster than calling. She held it, the weight of it, the cold, hard reality of it sinking in. This was her new life. On the third night, Rico entered the penthouse, his face grim but set. We have him. Lena, who was rocking Rosie, froze. Esteban's moving him, Rico said, pointing to a spot on the map. They're holding him at an old fish-packing warehouse on Pier 9. We have a visual. He's alive. Lena's knees went weak. Alive. The word was a miracle. The nightmare hadn't reached its end, but the worst hadn't happened yet. Rico and Dante immediately huddled with the team, their voices dropping into rapid, strategic Italian. Lena put Rosie in the crib and backed out of the room, her heart a frantic drum. She couldn't breathe. He was alive. Mister Navarro was alive. She went into the master bedroom, the only quiet place, and stood at the vast window, staring at the indifferent city lights. Tears of pure, unadulterated relief streamed down her face. She was so grateful she felt like she might shatter. She heard the door open behind her. It was Dante. He was in the shadows, his presence a solid, looming weight. He was preparing. He was going to go get him. Lena turned, her face wet, her body vibrating with a storm of emotions, terror for what was coming, an overwhelming gratitude for what he was about to do, for what he had already done. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for not leaving him. Dante stood motionless, his face a mask of the burden he carried. He's not home yet, but he's alive. She took a step toward him. You gave me that. You gave me that hope. She was emotionally overwhelmed, overflowing. The kiss in the garden had been about comfort, about finding a connection. This was different. This was a desperate, primal need to affirm life in the very face of death. She needed to feel him, to feel the solid, warm, living man who was her anchor in this storm. She crossed the room and threw herself into his arms. He caught her, his body rigid with surprise, but his arms, by reflex, wrapped around her, pulling her tight. She pressed her face into his chest, inhaling his scent, clinging to his strength. Lena, he breathed, his voice rough. She tilted her head back, her eyes wide and tear-filled, locking with his. I'm not afraid anymore, she whispered, a fierce, desperate truth. Not of this, not of you. She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was not gentle. It was a collision. She poured every ounce of her fear, her relief, her desperation, and her burgeoning, terrifying love into it. It was a kiss that said, You are alive. I am alive. We are here, right now. For a second, Dante remained stiff, his mind still in the war room. Then, with a low groan that was torn from the deepest part of his chest, He surrendered, his rigid control shattered. He kissed her back, his mouth taking hers, his hands sliding from her back, one tangling in her hair, the other gripping her waist, lifting her, pressing her against the cold glass of the window. The city lights blurred behind her. There was only him, his heat, his strength, the desperate, hungry intensity of his mouth. This was not the gentle protector. This was the man, stripped bare, his own needs, his own loneliness, finally unleashed. His lips left her mouth, trailing a line of fire down her jaw, to her throat. She arched her neck, her fingers digging into his shoulders. "Dante," she panted, her voice a plea. He lifted his head, his dark eyes burning into hers. The look in them was one of raw possession, of a man starved. "Lena, are you sure?" he whispered, his voice thick, for an answer. She reached for the buttons on her shirt, her hands shaking. He stopped her, his large hand covering hers. He didn't break eye contact. Slowly, deliberately. His fingers undid the first button, then the second. He was shedding her armor, and she was shedding his. He lifted her, his mouth reclaiming hers, and carried her to the bed. It was not a rush. It was a slow, deliberate, intense act of devotion. Clothes were removed, not torn, but peeled away. Each touch a reverence, each look a promise. He laid her back against the pillows, his body a dark, powerful shadow over hers. He looked at her, truly looked at her, his gaze tracing every line, every scar, every stretch mark from Rosie, as if they were a map he was memorizing. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice raw. He placed a hand flat on her stomach, his thumb tracing the faint, silvery lines. Lena's breath hitched. No one had ever touched her with such awe. She reached up, her hands framing his face, his 5 o'clock shadow rough against her palms. "I see you," she whispered. A truth she didn't even know she had. "Not the boss, not the ghost, you—" He closed his eyes, a tremor passing through him, and lowered his head, his lips brushing hers, a promise whispered in the space between breaths. Their bodies met, a slow, deep, seismic joining that was more than just physical. It was a grounding. It was two lost, lonely souls colliding, finding a center in each other. He moved with a controlled, agonizing slowness, his eyes locked on hers, his expression one of profound, painful, exquisite relief. He was not just a man, he was an anchor, and she held on, meeting his every move, their breaths and bodies finding a rhythm that was ancient and new. It was slow, it was intense, and it was filled with the silent, whispered truths of two people who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Hours later, Lena woke up alone. The bed was warm, the scent of him still on the pillows. She heard voices in the other room. The operation was starting. Dante personally led the rescue team. He moved through the darkness of the dockyards like a phantom, his men a silent, black-clad shadow behind him. The assault on the warehouse was fast, brutal, and precise. It was over in 4 minutes. Dante was the first one through the door, the first one to the damp, cold room where Mr. Navarro was tied. He personally cut the old man's bonds and lifted him into his arms, carrying him out as the sounds of his men cleaning up echoed behind them. When the elevator door at the safe house opened, Lena was waiting. She saw Dante, his face grim, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt stained with dirt, and in his arms, he was carrying Mr. Navarro. Lena let out a sob, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy, and ran to them. Mr. Navarro, bruised, exhausted, but alive, reached out a hand. "He's safe, mija," the old man whispered. "He's a good man. You're Dante. He saved me." Lena dissolved into tears, her gratitude so immense she couldn't speak, her hand clutching Dante's arm, her eyes thanking him in a way words never could. They brought Mr. Navarro back to his newly repaired apartment, leaving 2 guards on his door. The crisis, they believed, was over. Esteban's Northmore operation was shattered. Dante took Lena and Rosie back to their own apartment. The guards were posted. He had the door and frame replaced with reinforced steel. It was finally safe. It was this feeling of safety that proved to be the most dangerous thing of all. The next afternoon, Dante was in the kitchen on the phone with Rico, discussing the fallout. Lena was folding laundry. Rosie was in her crib in the bedroom, down for her nap. The guards were posted downstairs, at the front and back entrances to the building. The lapse was not one of security. It was one of imagination. They were all watching for a Viscari-level threat. They were watching for men in suits, for black sedans. No one was watching for Jake, and he was desperate, high, and had been watching the building for a day. He knew the guards were there, but he also knew the fire escape. He had used it before. He was a ghost from their old life, a life they thought they had left behind. Lena finished folding a small sleeper and went to check on Rosie. She walked into the bedroom. The air was cold. The window leading to the fire escape was wide open, the curtain fluttering in the breeze. The crib was empty. Lena's mind refused to process it. She looked at the empty white sheets, the impression of Rosie's head still on the mattress. She looked at the open window. There was no sound. The world went completely, utterly silent. Then she screamed. It was not a word. It was a raw, animal sound of pure, primal terror, a sound that ripped from her soul. Dante was in the room before she had drawn a second breath. He saw the empty crib. He saw the open window, his face, his entire world, drained of all color. "No," he whispered. Lena collapsed, her hands clawing at the crib's railing. "He took her, he took her, he took her. Dante, he took her." She was hysterical, her eyes rolling back. Dante grabbed her, his grip like steel, shaking her. "Lena, Lena, look at me." He pulled her face to his. "I will find her. I swear to you, I will bring her back." He dragged her to the kitchen, shouting into his phone. "Rosie is gone. Jake, he has her. Lock down the city. Lock it down." He shoved Lena into a chair. "Stay here." He mobilized every contact in Northmore City within 60 seconds, every street dealer on his payroll, every cab driver, every city sanitation worker, every Viscari-owned doorman had the description. He put a $50,000 bounty on Jake's head, for information only. He had men pulling every security camera feed in a 20-block radius. His city became a net, and it was closing. The call came in 12 minutes. A dealer near the old rail yards. "I see him. He's got a kid. Boss, he's ducking into the old train warehouse. Warehouse 4. Dante was out the door before the man finished the sentence. He drove himself, the SUV eating the distance, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his face a mask of such cold and murderous rage that even Rico, following in another car, stayed silent. He arrived at the abandoned warehouse. He didn't wait for his men. He got out of the car, pulling a heavy-caliber pistol from the glove box, and kicked in the rotting side door. The warehouse was a cavern of shadows and broken machinery. He heard her. Rosie. A thin, terrified wail. He followed the sound. In the center of the vast, empty floor. He found them. Jake was sitting on the ground, high as a kite, rocking Rosie, who was screaming. He was trying to shush her. "Shh, baby, it's okay. It's Daddy. We're gonna go away. She's gonna give us money, and we're gonna go. Let her go, Jake." Dante's voice echoed in the huge space. Cold as the grave. Jake scrambled to his feet, holding Rosie in front of him like a shield. His eyes were wide, pupils pinned. "Stay back. She's mine. You can't have her," I said. Dante took a slow, deliberate step forward. "Let her go." "No, you think you can just take my family. I'll drop her, I swear to God." Dante stopped. He looked at the terrified, desperate man. He looked at the screaming child, and he lowered his gun. He set it on the ground and kicked it away. "You don't want to hurt her, Jake," he said, his voice quiet, reasonable. "She's your daughter. You love her. I know you do. You're just sick. You need help. Jake was trembling, his resolve cracking. Give her to me, Jake, and I'll help you. I'll get you money. I'll get you clean. Whatever you want." Jake stared at him, his drug-addled mind trying to process. He looked at Rosie, her face purple from crying. He looked at Dante. "Money?" Jake whispered. "Yes, a lot of money." Dante took another slow step. Just hand her to me, gently." Jake hesitated, and in that second, Dante moved. He didn't lunge. He flowed, closing the 10 feet between them in a blur. He grabbed Jake's wrist, twisting it, forcing the arm up. He snatched Rosie from Jake's loosening grip, securing her against his own chest with one arm, all in a single, fluid motion. Rosie, recognizing his scent, his feel, instantly latched onto his shirt, her sobs quieting just a fraction. Jake, his arm broken, screamed and lunged. Dante didn't hesitate. He turned, shielding Rosie, and delivered a single, brutal side kick to Jake's chest. The sound of ribs cracking echoed in the warehouse. Jake flew backwards, skidding on the concrete floor. Dante laid Rosie gently on a pile of discarded tarps in the corner, pulling off his own suit jacket to cover her. Then he turned to Jake, who was wheezing, trying to get up. Dante walked over to him. He was no longer the reasonable man. He was the devil. He began to beat him. It was not a fight. It was a punishment. He was silent, his fists doing the work, a cold, precise, brutal dismantling. He broke his nose. He shattered his jaw. He beat him until Jake was a senseless, bloody heap on the concrete. He stood over him, his chest heaving, his hand raised for the final, killing blow. He looked at Jake, then he looked over at Rosie, who was watching him, her eyes wide. Her crying stopped, replaced by a terrified, hiccuping silence. He was about to kill a man in front of this child, his child. His raised fist trembled. All the rage, the fury, the terror, it drained away, leaving him cold and empty. He lowered his hand. He would not do this. For her sake. For Lena's. He pulled out his phone, his hands bloody, and dialed 911. "There's been an assault at the rail yard warehouse. Warehouse 4. Send an ambulance. And the police. The kidnapper is here. My name? I'm just a citizen." He hung up. He walked over to Rosie, his bloody hands clenched at his sides, and gently picked her up, wrapping her in his jacket. The sirens were approaching when the side door burst open again. It was Lena. She had followed him, against all orders. Her face was a mask of pure, abject terror. "Rosie," she screamed into the darkness. "I'm here." Dante's voice came from the shadows. Lena ran, stumbling, toward the sound. She saw him, and in his arms, she saw the bundle. She fell to her knees, her hands outstretched. "Rosie. Oh, God. Rosie." Dante knelt and placed the baby in her mother's arms. Lena grabbed her, pulling her in, her body collapsing over her daughter, a wave of sobs so profound it sounded like she was dying. She rocked back and forth, kissing Rosie's head, her face, her hands, checking every finger, whispering her name over and over. Dante stood up, his bloody knuckles throbbing. He watched them, the mother and daughter, reunited. He looked at the broken man on the floor. He heard the sirens outside. He walked over to Lena, helped her to her feet, and, in complete silence, guided her and the baby out a different exit, disappearing into the night just as the police lights flooded the warehouse. The drive home was utterly silent. Lena sat in the back, Rosie asleep in her arms, her cheek pressed to the baby's head. She had not stopped crying, but her sobs were silent. Exhausted, Dante drove, his eyes on the road, his face pale and drawn. He was visibly shaken, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard they ached. He had all the power in the world. He had guards. He had a network. He had a fortress. And a desperate, pathetic addict had walked in and taken the one thing that mattered. He had almost lost them. He had almost lost her. The silence in the car was heavier, more profound than any words could ever be. The apartment was silent, save for the hum of the city air purifiers. Dawn was breaking, a thin, gray light filtering through the bulletproof glass of the penthouse safe house. Lena was asleep on the deep, velvet couch, her body curled in on itself, one hand dangling off the cushion. She'd refused the bed, too raw, too terrified to be alone, and had collapsed there hours ago, the exhaustion of the previous day's terror finally claiming her. Dante had not slept. He sat in a low armchair opposite her, the first rays of morning light touching his face. He looked haggard, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt wrinkled and stained with Jake's blood. He had scrubbed his hands raw, but he could still feel the sickening crunch of bone in his arms, wrapped in a cashmere throw blanket. Was Rosie. She was awake, her eyes wide and curious in the dim light. She wasn't fussing, she was just watching him, her gaze unnervingly direct. He held her, his large, scarred hands that had taken lives and built an empire of fear, supporting her tiny back. He was holding her with the same awkward, terrified reverence he had at the estate, but this time, it was different. This time, he had almost lost her. Rosie lifted a tiny, starfish hand and brushed her fingers against the rough stubble on his jaw. It was a simple, exploring touch. A 9-month-old learning the world. Dante flinched, his breath catching. He watched her small, perfect fingers, the almost translucent nails. He saw the pulse beating in her fragile wrist. He had built his life on the principle of never having anything to lose. Sophia, his unborn child, they had been taken from him, and he had vowed to never, ever be that vulnerable again. His heart had been a fortress, sealed in ice. And this tiny creature, with her mother's eyes, had just walked right in and torn down the walls. He had almost failed. Dante Vascari, with all his men and all his power, had been brought to his knees by one pathetic, desperate addict. He had saved her. Yes, but the proximity of the loss, the razor-thin margin of that failure, had shattered his foundations. He looked at Lena, asleep, her face pale and tear-stained even in repose. He looked at Rosie, who was now quietly trying to chew on his collar. He admitted it to himself. In the cold, quiet morning, this was not penance for Sophia. This was not a debt. This was his family. And the realization, the sheer terrifying weight of that love settled on him, heavier and more real than his entire criminal empire. He couldn't just protect them. He couldn't let them go. Lena stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She woke with a gasp, her body lurching, her hand flying to her chest. "Rosie! She's here!" Dante's voice was rough from lack of sleep. "She's safe. Lena, you're both safe." Lena scrambled to her feet, her eyes finding him in the chair. The image stopped her cold. The most dangerous man in Northmore City, his face bruised by the gray light, his expensive shirt stained with blood, holding her daughter, who was happily gumming his collar. It was an image of terrifying contradictions. "Let me take her," Lena whispered, her arms outstretched. "Just a minute longer," Dante said, his voice quiet. He looked up at Lena, his eyes raw, stripped of all artifice. "We need to talk." He stood, gently handing Rosie to her. Lena clutched the baby, burying her face in Rosie's neck, inhaling the sweet, milky scent, reassuring herself that she was real, that she was here. "Jake is in police custody," Dante said, turning to look out the window at the waking city. "He'll be charged with kidnapping, breaking and entering. He won't see the outside of a prison for a very, very long time." "It's over." Lena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "Which means," Dante continued, "we need to decide what happens now." He turned back to her. He was the boss again, the man who solved problems. "I'm offering you a new life, Lena. Anything you want, a house, far from here, the estate, if you like it, a new name, money. Enough that you'll never have to worry again. Rosie's education, college, anything. I will surround you with so much protection that a man like Jake will never get within 100 miles of you. I will give you anything and everything to keep you safe." It was the offer of a king, a fortress, a life of perfect, gilded security. Lena looked at him. She looked at the steel-reinforced door of the penthouse. She looked at the bloody stain on his shirt. She remembered his face in the warehouse, the cold, dead-eyed fury as he beat Jake into a senseless pulp. She remembered Rosie, watching. This was not safety. This was just a different kind of war. "No," she whispered. Dante froze. "No? No!" Lena's voice grew stronger. She set Rosie, who was now sleepy, in the bassinet they had brought up. She turned to face him, her entire small frame trembling. But her eyes, for the first time, were without fear. They were full of a terrible, clear-eyed strength, I'm so grateful. Dante, I owe you my life. I owe you her life. I owe you Mr. Navarro's life." Tears began to stream down her face, but her voice didn't waver. "But I cannot accept your offer." "Why?" he asked, his voice flat, his confusion warring with his pride. "I am offering you the world. You're offering me your world," she cried. "And your world is terrifying. I don't want a fortress. Dante, I don't want guards. That isn't safety. That's just a prettier cage. I lived my whole life scared, and yesterday I saw what real fear looks like. It's not just Jake, it's Esteban. It's you." "Me," he repeated, his face hardening. "Yes, you," she said, jabbing a finger toward him. "I saw you in that warehouse. You weren't the man who held my hand in the garden. You were a killer. You almost killed him, right in front of her, right in front of my daughter, and I realized, I can't, I won't raise Rosie in a world where that is normal. I won't raise her to be afraid of her own father." The word hung in the air between them. Father. Dante recoiled, as if she had physically struck him. "I don't want your power." She wept, her anger breaking, replaced by a desperate, passionate plea. "I don't want your money. I've been poor my whole life. I can be poor again. I want a home. I want a kitchen where I can make breakfast. I want to be able to walk to the park and not have to check for green vans. I want love. Dante. Real love and truth. I want the man who sat in my tiny kitchen and told me about Sophia. I want the man who held my daughter like she was a miracle. I can't have him. If I also have to have the boss." She was sobbing now, her hands covering her face. "I can't love a man I'm afraid of, and I can't have my daughter love him either. You have to choose, because I won't. I won't choose that life." She was giving him an ultimatum, the one he had never faced, his empire or his family. Dante stood motionless, the silence stretching. He looked at her, this 24-year-old woman who had nothing, who was rejecting everything. For one simple, impossible thing, a normal life. She was rejecting his power, the very thing that had allowed him to save her. He walked past her, to the glass table that was still covered in maps. He picked up his phone. He looked at her, his face a mask of profound, agonizing conflict. He had built this life on the corpse of his old one. To walk away, it was not just leaving a job. It was ending a war. It was changing his own identity. He dialed. "Rico," he said, his voice flat. He waited. Lena watched, holding her breath. "It's done," Dante said, his voice quiet but final. "We're finished. The business. We're out." He paused, listening to what was surely a stream of shocked protest from the other end. "I don't care about Esteban," Dante cut him off. "I don't care about the territory. Liquidate it. All of it. The import channels, the books, the associates. Pay everyone out what they are owed and cut them loose. The darker assets. Get rid of them. I don't care how. I want it all clean. From now on, Vescari Holdings is legitimate. Real estate. Logistics. That's it. It's done. Rico, that's the order. Are you with me or not?" There was a long, heavy silence. Dante's face was grim. He was offering his right-hand man the same choice. "Good," Dante said, and his shoulders, for the first time since she'd met him, slumped in relief. "Start now. I don't care what it costs. Just get it done." He hung up the phone. He didn't turn around. He just stood there, his back to her, as the sun finally, fully rose over the city. He had just detonated his own life. He turned. He walked over to her. He looked exhausted and young. He cupped her face. His hands, the hands she had been so afraid of, were gentle. "I choose you, Lena," he whispered. "I choose this. I don't know how to be that man. The one who goes to the park, but I will learn. For you, for her." Lena fell into his arms, her sobs this time of pure, unadulterated relief. "I love you," she whispered into his chest. "God help me, Lena," he breathed, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you, too." The next week was a blur. Dante was true to his word. The empire was being dismantled, a process that was quiet but tectonic. Lena had one last thing to do. She walked into the Velvet Pearl. It was 6 p.m, the club empty except for Sal, who was stalking the bar. The air smelled of stale beer and cherries. "Lena!" Sal said, surprised, a little afraid. We didn't expect to see you, Mr. Vascari. Is everything?" "Everything is fine, Sal." Lena walked past him, through the dim, familiar room, and stood at the edge of the small, scarred stage. She looked at the pole, a silent witness to her desperation. She looked at the VIP balcony, where a ghost had watched her. She was not that person anymore. "I'm here to quit, Sal." "Quit?" He blinked. "Of course. I mean, naturally. I wanted to do it right." She turned and looked at him. "Thank you for the job. It helped." You're a good kid, Lena," Sal said, his voice surprisingly genuine. "You deserve what you got." She smiled, a real, warm smile. She turned, walked off the stage for the last time, her chin high, her back straight. She didn't look back. Dante was waiting for her in the car, a different car, not an SUV, a simple, black sedan. It wasn't the boss, waiting for his package. He was a man, waiting for the woman he loved. He opened the door for her. The next day, they went to see Mr. Navarro. The old man was recovering, his face still bruised but his eyes bright. Dante had paid for his medical care and had his guards posted outside. "I can't thank you enough. Mr. Vascari," Navarro said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's Dante," he corrected, uncomfortably. "And I'm the one who needs to thank you. You protected my family. You protected Rosie." "She is my granddaughter," Navarro said simply. "Which is why," Dante said, placing a folder on the counter. "This is for you." "Mr." Navarro opened it. It was the deed to the entire building, and a cashier's check for $250,000. "This is too much," the old man gasped, his eyes wide. "It's not enough," Dante said. "The store. It's yours. We're having it renovated. A thank you. From my family to yours." "Mr." Navarro wept, pulling Lena into a hug. They moved back to the estate. Not as a fortress, but as a home. The guards at the gate were replaced by a simple security service. The armed men in suits were gone, replaced by gardeners. It was quiet. The war was over. A month later, they were in the large, warm kitchen. A fire was crackling. Lena was cooking pasta, a real meal. Dante was on the floor, on his hands and knees, trying to get Rosie to crawl to him. "Come on, Piccola," he coaxed, his voice still awkward with affection. "Come on, you can do it." Rosie giggled, sitting on the rug, and just stared at him. "She's not going to—" Lena began to say, turning around, spatula in hand, but Rosie's expression changed. She saw Dante. She saw Lena. Her face lit up. She pushed herself up onto her chubby legs, her hands grabbing the edge of the coffee table. She stood there, wobbling, a look of profound shock on her own face. "Dante," Lena whispered, frozen. Dante turned his head slowly. He saw her, standing. Rosie let go of the table. She took one wobbly, hesitant step, then another. She was unsteady, her arms out, but she was doing it. She was walking. And she was walking straight to Dante. Dante, the head of the former Vascari syndicate, a man who had faced down assassins, was pale with terror. "Lena, she's— What do I do?" "Catch her!" Lena laughed through her tears. Rosie took one last step and fell forward, her hands landing on Dante's chest. He caught her, his hands enveloping her tiny body. She giggled, triumphant, and pulled herself up, patting his face. She looked at him, her eyes bright, and said, clear as a bell, "Da." Dante Vascari's world stopped. He looked at Lena, his eyes wide, devastated in the most beautiful way. Lena was crying, her hand over her mouth. He held Rosie close, burying his face in her soft hair, and his shoulders, for the first time, shook. Later that night, Rosie was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. Lena and Dante sat at the small table in the garden atrium, the one where he had first kissed her. The rain was gone. The sky was clear, full of stars. A single candle burned between them. Dante reached across the table and took her hand. He didn't just hold it. He lifted it to his lips and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to her knuckles. He looked at her. His eyes, once so cold and empty, now filled with a warm, steady light. "You made me feel human again," he whispered, his voice thick. Lena smiled, her own eyes filling with tears. She laced her fingers with his, holding on tight. "And you," she replied, her voice soft. "You made me feel safe." Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Lena and Dante. Where in the world are you listening from? Let us know in the comments below. We pour our hearts into these narratives, so please consider subscribing to Mafia Romance Stories for more content just like this. Your support means everything. We would love to read your thoughts on this story, so please share them in English.